Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2016 VW Golf R. This is the Mark 7 model, which ran from 2012 until 2019. Now, I'll openly admit I'm quite prejudiced towards the Golf R. And this isn't the car's fault. It's an idiot magnet. Bell ends are drawn to it like a moth to a light bulb. Let me give you an example. A couple of days ago I was driving an Audi A7 on the way to Macclesfield Audi. And I was on the London road, traffic was really heavy, it was about 9:30 in the morning. And in front of me was a Golf R in that blue colour, which they all seem to be in, with a 3D reg plate, and every few seconds there'd be a plume of smoke out the driver's window. He was obviously vaping. Now, that isn't actually the issue. We were both in the left lane, which was straight ahead only. The right lane was clear, but that was right only. The traffic was at a standstill, nobody was going anywhere. Next thing, the traffic moved forward ever so slightly, and the Golf switched lanes into the right lane. So I thought, oh well, easy mistake, he must have been in the wrong lane, he's actually turning right. You know what's coming, don't you? Yes, you're right. He shot ahead of everyone else, a dozen or so cars on the left, in the right-hand lane, which was clear, and then nipped back in right at the end. What sort of ignorant Neanderthal does that? I could feel myself getting all hot under the collar. Now, I'm a mellow man, a pacifist, and yet, for that split second, I would have quite happily clubbed the driver to death. And that is the essence of the Golf R driver. Not to care for anybody else, so long as they get to the destination as quick as possible. And it's a real crying shame because the car is absolutely fantastic. In case you don't know, the Golf R sits right at the top of the Golf family tree, ahead of the GTI. Its 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine produces 300 horsepower, and it's 4-wheel drive, which means this car's quick and incredibly grippy. And when I say quick, I mean 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds, and it keeps going until it reaches 155 miles an hour, which it's been limited to, by the way. I know there's a Golf badge on the boot lid, but it feels like more car than that. It feels chunky and solid. It almost feels like a mini RS4. And the steering's superb, the turning circle's tight. This is a 6-speed manual, which is good fun, but you could have opted for a 7-speed DSG Auto. I do like the manual though, it's a joy to use, it's nice and slick. And the clutch is very easy and forgiving. It's incredibly easy to drive this car fast. So can all of this change my mind on the Golf R? Well, you'll have to wait until the end, won't you? Right, well, styling wise it's all quite subtle, but it does sit really well, this. And I think for a Golf it's quite good looking. Each time I walk up to it I have a wry smile on my face. There's just something about it. The front looks much like a standard Golf, apart from the odd R badge here or there, but I guarantee your mother couldn't tell the difference between this and a 1.6 match. And I suppose that's part of the appeal. It's quite understated. Moving to the rear, this isn't understated at all. You've got those big quad exhausts which tell everyone in its shadow this is the hottest Golf out there. In race mode it sounds quite good too. It isn't too aggressive or shouty. It isn't a complete ASBO with windscreen wipers. I think it sounds good. But I'll let you be the judge. If you're observant, you'll have noticed that this is the 3-door model, but they do also offer it as a 5. Now that's all down to personal preference. The 3-door certainly looks better in my opinion, but it does lack some practicality. One positive thing to report about the 3-door though is that they're far less popular with car thieves. It seems even car criminals prefer the practicality of the 5-door. I like the wheels, and I like the fact that the wing mirrors are finished in a contrasting colour. I just think it looks cool. Moving inside the R, then it's like a Golf, really. But there are a few subtle differences. For example, you get these blue needles on the gauge cluster. You get a thread of blue light on the door sills. You get these beautiful bucket seats with the R logo on them. You get an R badge on the flat bottom sporty steering wheel, which by the way is finished in nice quality leather. It's all quite subtle and discreet. Everything feels reassuringly well built and Germanic. This particular model is quite a high spec with some nice options. For example, I've got a reverse camera, a sunroof, a leather interior with heated seats, adaptive cruise control, sat-nav, powerful mirrors, keyless go, keyless entry. All of these are options, by the way. And if you're looking for a used one, I'd make sure you go for a nicely spec'd model, because some of them can be quite austere. The sound system's very good and it's very easy to operate. You've got Bluetooth hands-free and Bluetooth media streaming, and it's all nice and easy to set up. It can be quite fiddly to operate on the go though, because it's all touchscreen and your hand kind of bounces around. The facelift MK7 Golf, known as the 7.5, came out in 2017, and that got a slightly bigger screen here and a digital gauge cluster. I've used this car multiple times over multiple days, and it's just really easy to live with. Although one thing that does concern me, every time I lock the car and walk away from it, I think to myself, am I ever going to see it again? They are sadly very popular with car thieves. You get a nice comfortable armrest, 2 cup holders, plenty of storage, nice big door pockets and auto hold, which in a manual car is a nice feature. There's plenty of room up front, plenty of leg room, plenty of headroom, plenty of elbow room, and even though this has got a dark interior, I think thanks to the sunroof, it feels quite light and airy. And the visibility is very good too. The rear space isn't great, but I suppose it's on par with what you'd expect from a car of this size. The boot's quite spacious though, although the R model does have a slightly smaller boot than any of the lesser models. That's on account of the 4-wheel drive system, which takes up some space under the boot floor. I hate to admit this, but it's such a pleasure to drive. But it does bring out the worst in you. Ordinarily, I'm quite a chilled out driver, but in this, I find myself overtaking, undertaking, going through lights just as they turn to red when I know I shouldn't. But I feel like you've got a free pass because everybody else on the road expects the driver of this car to be driving like a knob. So you can. I picked this up a few days ago from Yorkshire, and as I drove it back, it was a beautiful summer's evening, 27 degrees, nice clear sky, and there I was on the 62 in lane 3 with Capital Dance cranked right up, hammering it. That isn't me, but I loved every minute of it. I love driving it, and I really didn't expect to. The gearbox is a pleasure, the clutch isn't a chore, the driving position's great, and these buckety leather seats are comfortable and supportive. You've got all the ingredients there for a great car. You know, a while ago I filmed with a Mark V Golf GTI, and I was wearing a scarf, which admittedly was a mistake, but I complained that it didn't feel particularly hot. That had around 200 horsepower, and it was quick enough, but it wasn't particularly exhilarating. This is. For a car like this, I think 300 is the magic number. It's not so much that you're frightened of it, but it's more than enough to have some fun with. In terms of running costs, I'd take the MPG figures that VW claim with a pinch of salt. I could only manage 33 or 34 miles per gallon on a motorway run, and 24, 25 around town. Far less than you'd expect from a 2-litre Golf. Far less than I thought anyway. But on the bright side, the road tax isn't high. It'll set you back £220 a year. Parts aren't particularly expensive, nor is servicing. I recently had an interim service done on this at VW Stockport, and it cost me £202. I expect a full service would have cost around £400 or £500. Not bad really. When these cars were new, they cost nearly £50,000, which I think is ridiculous. But as a used buy, I think they're terrific value for money. If you're thinking about buying a used one, then here are some tips. First and foremost, you need to do a vehicle history check. I know you can find previous MOT history online for free, but you need to check whether the car's been involved in an accident, you need to check whether there's any outstanding finance on it, check how many owners it's had, all that sort of stuff. I always use and recommend a company called Car Vertical. All you do is go to carvertical.com, type in your vehicle reg or VIN number, and then minutes later you get a full detailed history report. And all it costs is the price of a couple of drinks in the pub, and it's well worth the payment, honestly. If you click the link below in the video description and use the promo code HIGHPEAK, you'll get 10% off each and every check that you do. It's so important, I really can't stress that enough. And this is the kind of car where you really need to keep your wits about you when buying one used. Once you've done that, you need to check the tyres. Make sure they're a decent brand. If they're a cheap brand, it usually means the car's been ran on a budget, and you don't want to buy one of these cars that's been ran on a shoestring. The last thing you want to do is inherit a load of deferred maintenance, because it will cost you an arm and a leg. You don't want to buy a used Golf R from somebody who can't afford to run one. Thirdly, make sure it's got full VW, or at the very least full VW specialist service history. Make sure it's got 2 keys, and make sure there's no obvious signs that it's had paintwork in the past, or poor paintwork. Make sure the number plates match. And when I say the number plates match, I mean the name at the bottom of the number plates. Make sure the front matches the back. Check the date stamps on the headlamps, for example. You really need to be switched on when buying one of these. So many of them have fallen into the wrong hands. They just end up being used as county lines delivery vehicles and quick getaway cars, and that isn't what you want to buy. Ideally, you want to buy one from some sort of wealthy business person who's just used this as their commuter car or their city car. Without wishing to sound like a terrible snob, try and buy one from a nice area or a nice house. And I wouldn't buy a modified one either. Try and find a nice original one that's been loved, not one that's been lowered and remapped and meth injected. What's all that about? Used prices here in the UK start at around £13,000, but I wouldn't advise you buy a cheap one. You're going to have to spend around £16,000 to get yourself a half decent one. It does get some attention, this. You can see people looking at it. I've enjoyed using this, but has it made me change my mind? Has it made me want one? I can now see the appeal, I really can. But I think personally, because I don't really need the rear seats, I'd go with something like a TTS instead. If I absolutely needed the rear seats, then I think I'd probably go for an M140. I really love that car. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Well, I think that's about it then. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you got any comments or questions, then let me know below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you're interested in getting into the used car business, then check out my online course. I've created an online portal with nearly 100 videos which explain every single aspect of the used motor trade. Where to start, funding, branding, sourcing cars, it's all there, so do check it out. And it's totally free for the first 30 days. And only £27 a month thereafter, and you can cancel at any time. So yeah, cheers guys, I'll see you next time.